Sophie Rain is all washed up. On the beach. Sophie took to her Instagram to give us a glimpse of a recent sandy night swim. Gotta wonder if James Fishback has peeped this post yet. In case you missed it, Florida gubernatorial candidate James Fishback wants to tax Sophie and other OnlyFans models 50% of their income in the Sunshine State. But this has clearly not stopped Sophie from showing off the curves that have made her a multi-millionaire. Slide into the gallery above to see hot shots so good, they demand to be taxed. Also, check out our image puzzle below, featuring Sophie. And just like that, with a single post and a few perfectly timed images, Sophie Rain once again reminded the internet why she remains one of the most talked about names in the OnlyFans world. The photos didn't come with a manifesto or a political statement. There was no lengthy caption addressing policies, taxes, or politicians. Instead, there was sand, moonlight, water, and Sophie, confident, relaxed, and fully aware of the effect her presence has on the digital space she dominates. It was the kind of post that doesn't need explanation because the message is implicit: she's still here, still winning, and still very much unbothered. The timing, however, is what made the post impossible to ignore. As debates swirl around content creators, morality, and money, Sophie's decision to share such carefree, sensual images felt less like coincidence and more like quiet defiance. Whether intentional or not, the contrast between a politician proposing harsh financial penalties and a creator casually enjoying a nighttime swim was striking. On one side, rigid policy talk and moral posturing. On the other, freedom, confidence, and the unmistakable glow of someone who understands her own power. Sophie Rain didn't become a multimillionaire by accident. Her rise wasn't overnight, and it certainly wasn't effortless. Behind every polished image is an understanding of branding, timing, and audience psychology that many critics underestimate or outright ignore. Sophie knows when to post. She knows what resonates. She understands how to stay just ahead of the conversation without ever looking like she's chasing it. And most importantly, she knows how to remain in control of her narrative even when others try to write it for her. James Fishback's proposal to tax OnlyFans creators at a staggering 50% didn't just spark outrage, it exposed a deeper discomfort with the shifting nature of work and wealth in the digital age. OnlyFans models like Sophie represent a new kind of economic independence, one that doesn't rely on traditional gatekeepers or institutions. That kind of autonomy has always made people uneasy, especially when it's exercised by women who are unapologetic about both their bodies and their bank accounts. Yet Sophie's response, if it can even be called that, wasn't defensive. It wasn't reactive. It was simply Sophie being Sophie. The beach photos weren't aggressive or explicit. They were confident, playful, and undeniably intentional. The water clung to her skin, the sand catching the light just enough to highlight the curves that have fueled her empire. It was a reminder that her success isn't theoretical, it's visible, tangible, and very real. What makes the moment even more fascinating is how it blurs the line between politics and pop culture. A gubernatorial candidate talking about taxing OnlyFans models would have seemed absurd just a decade ago. Today, it's headline material. And Sophie Rain finds herself at the center of that conversation without ever stepping onto a debate stage. Her body, her brand, and her income have somehow become talking points in a political race, whether she consented to that role or not. But Sophie doesn't look like someone weighed down by controversy. If anything, the images suggest the opposite. There's ease in her posture, confidence in the way she meets the camera, and a sense of calm that only comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you've built. She isn't scrambling to justify her success. She isn't trying to soften her image to appear more acceptable. She's leaning into what made her famous in the first place, fully aware that attention, positive or negative, only strengthens her reach. The phrase, washed up, in this context feels almost ironic. Traditionally, it's used to describe someone whose best days are behind them, someone clinging to relevance. Sophie Rain is anything but that. She's at the height of her influence, with millions watching her every move. Being washed up on the beach is literal here, not metaphorical, and the distinction matters. Sophie isn't fading away, she's standing front and center in the cultural spotlight, whether politicians like it or not. As fans flooded the comments with fire emojis, jokes about taxes, and playful jabs at Florida politics, it became clear that Sophie's audience understands the moment just as well as she does. They see the absurdity in trying to regulate desire, attention, and digital entrepreneurship with outdated frameworks. They recognize that Sophie's success challenges conventional ideas about labor and value, and they celebrate her for it. Critics, of course, were quick to weigh in as well. Some questioned the sustainability of her career. Others framed Fishback's proposal as a necessary, moral correction. But these arguments often ring hollow when contrasted with the reality Sophie represents. She's not a hypothetical case study, she's living proof that the creator economy isn't a fad. It's a structural shift, and people like Sophie are leading it whether lawmakers are ready or not. The gallery invitation, "Hot shots so good, they demand to be taxed," adds another layer of satire to the situation. It pokes fun at the entire premise of the proposal, highlighting how ridiculous it sounds when stripped of political language and presented plainly. The images don't demand taxation, they demand attention. And attention, in today's economy, is currency. Sophie understands that better than most. Then there's the image puzzle, a small but telling detail. Turning Sophie's image into a game reinforces her status as a cultural figure rather than just a person posting photos. She's recognizable enough to be a visual challenge, a face people instantly know. That kind of visibility isn't accidental. It's earned through consistency, strategy, and an unshakable understanding of one's audience. Behind all of this, though, is a quieter truth that often gets lost. Being constantly visible comes with pressure. Every post is dissected. Every move is interpreted. When politics enters the mix, that scrutiny intensifies. Sophie didn't ask to become a symbol in a tax debate, yet here she is, her livelihood discussed by people who have never met her and likely never will. And still, she posts. Still, she thrives. That resilience is part of what makes her so compelling. Sophie Rain isn't just selling images, she's selling confidence, autonomy, and the idea that success doesn't have to look the way society expects it to. Her beach photos aren't just about aesthetics, they're about presence. About existing loudly in a world that keeps trying to tell women like her to shrink, to justify, to explain. And as the waves roll in behind her, endless and uncontrollable, the symbolism becomes impossible to ignore. You can't fence in the ocean. You can't tax the tide. You can't regulate away the fact that people like Sophie have learned how to thrive in spaces that didn't exist a generation ago. The internet is vast, borderless, and constantly shifting, much like the water behind her in those photos. Sophie Rain knows this. And whether James Fishback has peeped the post or not, the message has already landed exactly where it was meant to. The reality is that Sophie Rain exists at the crossroads of attention, controversy, and cultural change, and that's not a place many people can occupy comfortably. For every admirer who praises her confidence and business savvy, there's a critic who sees her success as a provocation, a challenge to long-held ideas about how money should be made and who deserves to make it. Yet Sophie doesn't appear burdened by that tension. If anything, she seems to move through it effortlessly, aware that the very debates swirling around her only reinforce her relevance. What makes her beach post particularly potent is how effortlessly it blends softness with strength. There's nothing aggressive about a late-night swim. It's intimate, almost peaceful. And yet, within the current climate, it becomes charged with meaning. Sophie isn't standing at a podium. She isn't issuing demands. She's simply existing visibly, profitably, and unapologetically. That, for some, is more unsettling than any explicit statement could ever be.